Good morning. Good evening, I mean. Excuse me.
Good morning.
Good morning. How do you do?
Yes, I do okay. It is really lovely to be here with you on this. How about you, BA? How are you?
I'm doing very well. It's been a busy season, but things are going well. What's new with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I was had a good day working from home, doing a lot of organizing from home, and making some good things happen. Putting together some events that are really exciting, trying to lean into mutual aid and show up for community. And I am vibing the shirt that my partner. It is my bird armor, as I like to call it.
Yeah, I know, it's really cool. I'm really excited about it. And tonight we're going to be talking about radical love, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, hate, and of course the main subject. Jay, it's been really exciting working on this with you, and it's nice to explore these topics together.
Absolutely. And we did a first segment a couple weeks ago about anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and other forms of hate. And it's good to be back on it because we've got some good things to bring today, good things to engage and see what people are finding as big topics. We're in the month of Ramadan now. Celebration in the Muslim community, and a lot of relevancy here. So definitely glad we're getting back together on this.
Yeah. For folks in the audience, feel free to say hello. Feel free to introduce yourself. Say what brings you here, or just say hello.
As we have dubbed it, and it makes me very happy, Solidarity Wednesdays. There's a night on this fine Wednesday, a prime one for solidarity. We've got a history of coming together in the middle of the week about a host of things. So maybe we even got some people that have been in Solidarity Wednesdays in the past here with us.
In fact, I see Jay, you're saying hello to everybody in the chat and introducing yourself. I see Shady Bird 25 who says, "Hey y'all, this is Sadie. So excited to see you both and hear this convo." Thanks so much, Sadie.
Hey Sadie, yeah, we took action together up in Chicago at the action we did against targeting the DNC chair.
Yes, that was really a lot of fun. I'm glad. Thanks so much. Thanks so much for coming out tonight. Yeah, thank you. Thanks. So we've got a number of things that we can explore tonight, and if there's stuff, by the way, that we can also bring in, I see Mackenzie says radical love with all the hearts. Thank you. Thanks for bringing some radical love tonight. It's an exciting night, you know. It's almost a month after St. Valentine's Day, I notice as well. Almost.
Yeah. And Mackenzie's radical expression there just reminds me that, well, I think we touched on this last time too, but so many of us come to these justice fights in a sense of outrage, and that's super important. And we've been learning, I think, safe to say, equally important is, if not even more, this sense of love and togetherness to keep us in it, because the stuff sure is heavy. We'll be seeing that later, that's for sure. But to carry that heaviness together is pretty essential. I know I've been seeing a level of support, understanding when you're fighting these fights alongside your friends and family.
Yeah, it's important when we're struggling for justice to have successes, victory, care, that we make sure everybody gets home safely. In fact, I want to. I see we've got somebody who stepped into the room for a second. Let's bring in Carla. Hello, Carla.
Hi.
Welcome.
Hey, Carla.
Hello.
Yeah, we're talking. I don't know if you've seen. We're talking about radical love, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, hate, as well. And so tonight we've got a number of things for folks. I'm just gonna actually refresh this for just a sec. Let's see. But we've got a number of things here for folks. So we have a little bit about Islamophobia here tonight. We have some resources about anti-Semitism as well that we want to explore. I don't know if folks saw Democracy Now! Today, but Michelle Alexander was on there. So we'll be going into that. And we want to do a little section where folks can explore some bird dogging they might want to do. And so if there's bird dog topics that people want to explore tonight, after we explore some of the earlier topics, you can explore that. You can even work on your own stories about it. So does anybody have any ideas? We could talk a little bit also right here. I just want to say a little bit about this. What do you all notice on this page? And lots of people who have been in the audience have been seeing this stuff for a while. But what do you all notice even just on this page right here?
I think bringing some principles of this mutual learning that I know I've been really enjoying, this new approach, and I mean new for me, I guess, but like parsing through the information that we see in these various struggles or conflicts or injustices. The way we can do it together has been really enlightening. So I see here some questions that really help us to each give what we're noticing, what we're seeing, what we're confused or puzzled about. So I think there's some really helpful questions there.
Yeah, we've got some questions here, and we'll be using these questions throughout the night. And feel free at any time to start answering these questions, especially at the beginning. What do you notice? But as we keep going through this, we're going to be talking about the perspectives that different people have and different puzzles that unfold for us as a group. So we can explore that more. But where do we want to go next? Do we want to explore anti-Semitism or Islamophobia or radical love? And feel free to share in the audience if there's something you're passionate about in the audience. I see Mackenzie says, Democracy Now! Was great today. Made me think of the episode we did on MLK Day talking about his Vietnam speech. Yeah.
That was a great one.
Yeah, there's a lot in there today of what we've been talking about a lot and what we're talking and so it'll be exciting to explore.
Yeah. Carla, maybe first of all, how you doing, and where do you think we should go?
Hi Jay, it's great to be with you. And of course VA. I loved the Radical Love, I watched it, and I think a lot of people don't know about MLK and his struggle about the Vietnam War and how hard it was for him to keep his mouth shut, and then how heartbreaking it was when everyone kind of turned on him. And I think that's really important message, because so much in our work we feel like people don't agree with us, or so the questions that we have are a good way for us to start opening our minds and really not take things personal, because we're really kind of looking at that other side of because we all know how we feel, right? I have some definite thoughts about how I want the world to look like, and it's important to talk to other people and basically get where they're at. And this is it's been mind-blowing. It's been a lot of fun, to start implementing this in the the outside world, where I'm grooming everyone to be a feminist. So I'm like loving it. So, and then of course all the heartbreaking stuff of Gaza, and this everyday waking up with like, why can't we stop this? And there's a couple of thoughts on that too.
Mackenzie says, I heard the same quote listening to Bell Hooks' Teaching to Transgress. Also, it keeps popping up everywhere. Yeah, Mackenzie knows this too. We're going to be reading Teaching to Transgress in this group by Bell Hooks. We're also going to be reading Eleanor Duckworth's The Having of Wonderful Ideas as a group. So if you want to be a part of that, let us know when you've read the first chapter of either of those books, and we'll organize a group reading of that. And Mackenzie says from the MLK Vietnam speech.
Yeah, we'd love. I don't know if I'll be able to read all four. It's beautiful how many we've got in the queue. But yeah, stay tuned for more info, y'all, and future streams, and we'll post them about when the book clubs are coming up. We've got the one on Sunday at 10:30. So maybe we can drop some of the info here soon too.
Yeah, we'll be starting with Noor Erekat, Justice for Some, the law and the question of Palestine.
Yes.
So that's gonna be coming up. That's gonna be coming up this week. So on Sunday at 9:30 a.m. Central and 10:30 a.m. Eastern.
Early.
Yes.
Been a long time I've been in a book club, but can't think of. This actually might be my first. Now I'm thinking about it.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I used to. We need to talk to my friend Paul. He and I used to run the Chicago Shakespeare meetup together. And Mackenzie says also, yes, Carla, intersectional feminism, hearts.
Yes.
Yes.
So yeah, let's take a look. Should we take a look at Michelle Alexander on Democracy Now! Today a little bit? And just start with this. And as we're going through this, I want to just invite everybody in the audience and everybody here to share what you're noticing. What is she saying? What do you see? What do you hear? Feel free to share details of things that she's bringing up, and that'll help us focus on help us be more present in this moment. So.
But you also raised in your article that all of this is happening right now in the midst of a presidential election here in the United States. And what do you see as the impact of the policy of the Biden administration in terms of, especially in terms of Gaza and the genocide there, and what the impact may be on the result of our election?
Well, tens of thousands of people have been killed in Gaza in just a few months with our bombs, mass murder funded by our government, aided and abetted by our military, paid for in large part by our tax dollars. And while we have been told by our government that we are not witnessing genocide, I and millions of people around the world have watched, as videos have traveled around the globe, we've watched, as mothers have pulled body parts of their dead children out of rubble, as people have had their limbs amputated, sawed off without anesthesia because the hospitals have been destroyed and there's no medicine, including pain medication, to be found. We've watched as people facing starvation have been shot at by Israeli soldiers as they approach vehicles carrying aid. And so, the Biden administration seems to be surprised that people who are not Palestinian care as deeply as we do. And I think if the Democratic Party and the Biden administration is serious about winning this next election, they must not only insist upon a ceasefire, but end the aid for the military support and the bombs, and must invest and ensure that the people who are starving and who are suffering there get the aid that they need to survive. We must end the occupation of Palestine and commit to the thriving of all of the people who have been subjected to relentless war and occupation for decades now. And so, yeah, I do think it's an important issue in this election year. And, you know, as I point out in the piece, that there are many, many things that are weighing on the minds and the hearts of the American people right now. It is the mass killing in Gaza, you know, more than 10,000 children, and the destruction of hospitals, schools, churches, mosques, universities, museums, and nearly all the basic infrastructure. It is the memories of the killings that occurred on October 7th, memories that many continue to carry along with deep grief and fear. But there's also, you know, fears of the threats to our democracy, to the very ideas of diversity and inclusion. And there's the threat of climate change. You know, 2023 was the hottest year on record, and it seems we may have already passed a critical tipping point. And yet the 5 biggest oil companies last year raked in record profits, nearly $200 billion in profits, more than the economic output of most countries. And, you know, if all that wasn't enough, we keep learning more and more that AI just might destroy humanity. And, you know, I find that people often ask me as I speak about issues related to climate change and the war in Gaza and the threats related to the rise in technology, you know, what does any of this have to do with mass incarceration or police violence, the issues and causes that have been most pressing and most important to me for much of my life? And what I always say is that these issues have everything to do with mass incarceration. These are existential crises that we face because we have persisted in treating people and all of creation as exploitable and disposable, unworthy of our care and concern. We are lost in the delusion that we can solve problems or do justice or achieve peace and security simply by locking people up, throwing away the key, destroying their lives and families, getting rid of them, declaring wars on them, wars on drugs, wars on crime, wars on Gaza. And that's why I keep returning again and again to the speech that Martin Luther King, you know, gave near the end of his life, the speech where he condemned the Vietnam War and was immediately canceled. That's what my Peace in the Nation is ultimately about.
So what's everyone noticing from this? I wanted to, a number of people posted things in the chat, and some of them I was tepid about sharing just because some of them have a lot in them. Jay, you shared this. Do you want to read it for the group?
Yeah. I thought she did this so well. She's laying out the weight that's on the hearts and minds of the American people due to what's happening in Palestine. Since we're here, and she said from the killings in Gaza, the threats to our democracy, the connection to climate change that this travesty has, laying out those multiple reasons that it's on our hearts and minds. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think she's also pointing out hard it's getting to ignore all of this stuff for everybody around the world, except for the government doesn't seem to have a problem with it. But all of us are screaming to do something about it, and they just completely ignore all of us. And she's brought that up with from our core of where, like, as far as people being in prison to ignoring the starvation that's happening and being shot at when you're trying to go get food for aid. What good is it to drop food if the people who need it can't even get it? So a lot going on.
Yeah, and maybe a way to absolutely, and maybe a way to interact it too is if curious if our audience, if it's weighing on you all's hearts and minds, and if so, how. Would love to hear that, because I know, as we're seeing, it's laying out in so many different directions.
Yeah, I see Shady Bird 25 says the genocide in Palestine seems to be the unveiling of all these root issues and intersectionality we have across the globe. Yeah, so I'm hearing here from Mackenzie also, Biden underestimates how much love Americans have for Palestine. And so I've heard us talk about how there's something off about this, right? That Palestinians are getting trampled trying to get food. Getting them food is not working. There's this also connection with incarceration, and with like looking at her book, The New Jim Crow. There's also a connection there, in that sense. And you talking, Jay, about the weight in the hearts and minds of American people due to what's happening and the threats in democracy. And so there's this, so people are thinking about this, these different issues. What are there any other things folks noticed from that segment that we just listened to that you're thinking about?
Yeah, this is what Mackenzie and I are on the same page tonight. The first, those exact. Maybe I can read.
Yeah, do you want to read it?
Yeah, read Mackenzie's. I'm hearing her say that oppression and war and ecological devastation are built on the assumption that people will remain in a state of lovelessness that has been imposed on us. Yeah. I mean, we see how much division and how much that comes through, and if that's not an imposition, I don't know what is. And to connect it to these wars, I think this practice of revolutionary love that Michelle seems to exhibit, it's talking about how love can help save us from this approach where it's just the war on this, or the war on that, the war on terror, the war on crime, the war on terror. Can we imagine a little bit something different than a war? Oh, you did.
Yeah.
I said maybe sometimes it's just really hard for us to, in this society, to imagine something without a war, because we think of everything in terms, like, war is almost in some circles synonymous with doing. Like, people use war language to suggest that they're going to get something done.
Well, I know in our trans rights community, it's super important to show joy and how much joy there is in living, because of all the severe attacks, and like you're saying, Jay, it just seems like there's a war on people everywhere. I spent a lot of time driving around the city yesterday and saw so many houseless people, and I mean, again, at its roots, like how can we, it's hard to see these people and not be able to help them. And that's exactly how I feel about, Palestine, is like, oh my gosh, we see what's happening and we cannot help you. And the people that we want are begging to help, won't help. And so, and you're right, they come at us with all this hate, and we are still like, nope, we're gonna come with love and heart.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think I was looking to see who had the quote, but ever since I heard that war is a failure of human imagination, it's not imaginative at all. It's just literally the thing that's been done over millennia, and it's so uninspiring. It's so yeah, it's so like what's disappointing on a human level to think that that's the way to take action in the world. A real lack of imagination for sure.
It's insane too. That's their answer every single time. Every time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's two things there, right? So I think we were talking about this before. Ralph Waldo Emerson even had said before this, the only sin is a lack of imagination. Franz Kafka said the only sin is a lack of patience. But then to what you were saying, Carla, repeat. Can you remind me what you just said? I'm sorry.
Nope.
Okay. Fair enough. Yeah.
No, but well tied, BA. Way to show off a little bit. That's beautiful, because I think that those lay out that it's not really care. It's not really any purpose that can be said is advancing these things. Like it's even a negative sense. Like you're saying, a war on terror. Like how do you fight terror with terror? Like,
well, and I now I remember what you were saying, Carla. You were talking about how eager people are to go to war, and like how it's the only thing that people know. And I think of what Colonel John Boyd said when people would say that the military doesn't have a strategy. He'd say, of course the military has a strategy. The strategy is don't block the flow of money, add to it if you can. Sadly. Shady Bird 25 also says, yes, I feel like I've heard the sentiment a lot lately that showing up out of love rather than anger, shame, etc. is the most important thing when doing any times of resistance work, that is.
and I did absolutely. I would plus that up like crazy, and I mean, I think that when I took a course from the King Center, it's called Be Love, and it was just talking about how love in an agape sense is no weak or emotional bosh, no weak thing or emotional bosh, and just really this revolutionary sense of caring and wondering and imagining how to do it differently. And it even can encompass like some radical anger and expression that is. I remember asking like, oh, is tough love a thing? And it's this love can be a banner of real practical things, and showing up with that kind of a love to want to transform it. It's insanely powerful. It seems to me.
Well, and so now coming back to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in the context of this article in The Nation that Michelle Alexander wrote, she talks, one thing that I noticed that we didn't bring up is that she said that Dr. King was canceled for condemning the Vietnam War, that he was canceled for it. And do we want to just read a little bit of this, just read a little bit out loud maybe, and take a look at this a bit more, and then look at some anti-Semitism and Islamophobia stuff? People are ready?
Sure. Yeah. Who wants to kick it off?
Does somebody want to read maybe the first paragraph, and then somebody else will read the second one, and then one of us will take the third?
I'll read the first. This moment feels different. Something new is in the air.
Of course, everything is always changing, Impermanence is the way of life. Philosophers, theologians, and poets have reminded us for centuries that the only constant is change. And the late, great Nina Simone once put it,
The young become the old, and mysteries do unfold, for that's the way of time. No one and nothing stays unchanged.
So, what are folks in the audience noticing about what we're just seeing at the beginning of this so far? What are folks noticing here?
The only constant is change.
Yeah. Michel de Montaigne said the most universal human characteristic is our diversity.
Mm.
It's very, very philosophical.
Yeah. Wow.
And
Yeah.
nothing stays unchanged. What's the point of view of this? What would you say the point of view of this is?
I think to me it seems like a trying to reset and reimagine something that is consistently true, like that change is ever present, and that it's a new type of change that might be in the air, and seems that that framing is brought to almost like sit on top of her main point. Yeah.
Yeah, Mackenzie says, I like that she starts with hope and praise of change. Yeah, and then does someone want to read the next paragraph?
Still, I think I am not alone in sensing that this year feels different. Something new is in the air.
Some would say it is in the stench of death. We can smell it now, almost taste it. Tens of thousands of people have been killed in Gaza in just a few months with our bombs. Mass murder funded by our government, aided and abetted by our military, paid for by our tax dollars. We've been told by our government that we are not witnessing genocide. What do folks notice about that?
I think the beginning. Go ahead, Jay.
Oh no, you got it.
I think in the beginning it seemed kind of neutral as far as the poem goes, as far as like, the young become old, just kind of facts. And then it moves into this stench of death, and the world it's changes, but at the same time, we just talked about how they keep doing the same thing. So the same thing is happening. And honestly, all this death is building up around us. We know in our world, in the ocean, our people. So it's yet another example. Like we know we're witnessing, we know what we're seeing. We know the planet's dying, and yet they continue with money.
Right. Yeah. So you're pointing out that mass killing and death goes on around us, and it keeps going around. And there's something. Are you saying there's something kind of normalizing to it? Did you say, or?
That's the only thing that's not changing.
Yeah.
There's all this change, but that's a constant that does not change. But the stench of death, we won't be able to ignore that much longer.
Yeah. I notice here, we have been told by our government that we are not witnessing genocide. She makes a point of saying that. In fact, she says it multiple times. She said it in the Democracy Now! Interview too.
Yeah. And no, exactly. I mean, that there's the piece there of the efforts to reframe and to continue reframing it in the ways that they probably have continued to, in the same presence of death and destruction and war. And I think and I noticed as well the evocation, is that a word? The evoking of the scent, the smelling and the tasting. It's like that is a cross humanity expression. I mean, even maybe wider, but a way to convey that this is something that if anybody was in Gaza, that had to be, and that during this time, like, it would be inescapable. And it's almost, by writing this, almost seems to be extending it around the world. It's powerful writing.
Yeah. Now, do we want to? We could come back to this in a bit, but I'm wondering, do we want to take a look at some of the couple examples we have of anti-Semitism and Islamophobia now? Or do we want to keep going with this for a little bit longer?
Can you scroll down just for a sec? I think I'm trying to remember if the next I mean, could you mind if I just read this next paragraph, because I think it helps to, like, just show the direct.
I think that would be great. Do we want to read the next two, actually?
Cool. Yeah, I think it's a really
let's go for it. Let's go for it. I think that's a great idea. Yeah.
Drop it in the chat too. Cool.
Yeah, I'll drop it in the chat too.
Awesome. So and I'll continue here. And yet, I, like millions of people around the world, I've watched the hearings at the International Court of Justice in The Hague as charges have been brought by South Africa charging Israel with genocide. Hearings that mainstream news outlets refuse to air.
But that is not all that I've watched. For more than 150 days, I've watched videos that have traveled around the globe. I've watched as mothers have pulled body parts of their dead children out of the rubble, then gathered pieces of their children, hands, arms, and legs, into bags and carried the remains of their children down the street in agony, with grieving relatives wailing and trailing behind them, watching as fathers have sprinted to buildings that have just been bombed, arriving in time to learn their entire family is dead. I've watched as children in hospitals have been told that no, your mother did not survive, and neither did your father or your sister or your uncle. One nurse with tears in her eyes tried to reassure a young boy that he isn't actually alone in the world, telling him, "I am here, little one. I am here for you," even though all his family is gone, every last relative lost in the rubble. I've watched as children had their limbs amputated, sawed off, without anesthesia, because the hospitals have been destroyed by bombs and there is no medicine, including pain medication, to be found. I have watched as people facing starvation have been shot at by soldiers as they approached vehicles carrying aid. What do you notice, everybody? What do you notice? Rachel shares the sad emoji. I'll put the rest of this paragraph in the chat too.
Yeah, it's really, really heart-wrenching. I think this ties to a little bit of the comment. What it speaks up in me is that when she's saying how the hearts and minds feel this way, it's of this detail that feels like too much to ever really comprehend. But here we are, studying and learning about this, and I know I've experienced it very many times across these last 160 days, 150 something days, that it's just an incomprehensible weight, really, and that's even for me who doesn't have family there.
I think she's definitely laying out the truth about what's happening to these people. And I don't know if people don't, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's just really hard to hear about children dying. And so I think everyone needs to know what's going on there, and it's not normal, and we're not disposable. Nobody is. But I think she's definitely having, like, we have to tell people what's going on there, and unfortunately telling them exactly what's going on there, because they won't show that on the news or tell people about what's going on. And it does seem like so many people just don't have any idea what's going on for these people, and they're struggling.
Yeah, I'm hearing you say that a lot of people aren't informed about this and they get kept out of it. I see from Rachel in the audience, she says, poor babies. And Shadybird25 says, I mean, for many of us, this is our first genocide. How are we supposed to watch these videos and maintain normalcy? How can we not question everything when seeing these videos daily? How many people in the audience here have seen their friends almost have breakdowns or things? Yeah, raise your hand, or like, just share a hand, share a +1 or something in the chat. But yeah. I hear Mackenzie say, I'm hearing her say something I feel so much these days, that our government is completely out of touch with how we feel and does not protect us. It's impossible for them to lie to us anymore. We can try to remain apathetic to cope, or we can let ourselves feel the injustice and choose love. Rachel writes, feel free, by the way, if I say Rachel writes, feel free somebody else to read what they say.
Yeah, I can say that Rachel wrote, watching from us live from Facebook, that they write no parents on the bodies of kids. I think that's referring to the children victims that have been taken, and from their lives have been taken, and parents aren't to be found. They maybe even if they're alive, maybe their parents have been taken or martyred, or killed, and just to imagine how many orphans are being made through this.
Yeah,
as well. It's another effect on children.
This will go down for generations in these families. This is just.
Can I just read again too? That last line from Mackenzie is really needed, and a little buoy. We can try to remain apathetic to cope, or we can let ourselves feel the injustice and choose love. Yeah.
Yeah, and Mackenzie also says, I think people aren't informed, but they also carry the weight of looking away, whether they realize it or not.
Mm-hmm.
There's a little bit more from Michelle Alexander we should maybe read, now that I'm thinking about it. She has a quote from Dr. King. And then she talks about love a little bit. Maybe we could read just a little bit more of this. And Mackenzie also, Shadybird25 says 1000%. Does somebody want to read the Dr. King quote?
Carla?
Okay. We are now faced with the fact that tomorrow is today. We are confronted with the fierce urgency of now. In this unfolding conundrum of life and history, there is such a thing as being too late. We may cry out desperately for time to pause in her passage, but time is deaf to every plea and rushes on. Over the bleached bones and jumbled residue of numerous civilizations are written the pathetic words, too late.
Over the bleached bones and jumbled residue of numerous civilizations are written the words, too late. What does everybody notice in this? What's the point of view of the author?
I think part of the point of view is from Caring Soul. We know much of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s life was doing revolutionary love, and through that care, looking back over human history and seeing that the skeletons and mixed, bleached bones and jumbled residue of numerous civilizations are written the pathetic words, too late. That the challenge and the calling to look at these things as they're happening in real time and wonder what we can do, what we wish people from history would have done to stop other genocides. I think the perspective is that there's been pathetic results in showing up in response to these, and how do we, I feel a calling of how do we rise above that trend.
So yeah, I'm hearing you say that his point of view is at the kind of the deep apathy or the deep inaction, and then also asking, what can we do?
We also know that shortly after this, he was assassinated, and he lived with that, knowing he was going to be assassinated. I think pretty much after he came out with this, that's when it got really, really dangerous for him, and he lost protection. So it kind of resonates with his time too. Like, he did as much as he could, and he was watching his people be killed at rallies. And we knew, you knew back then, if you went to a rally, there was a good chance you were going to get shot. You were probably definitely going to get beat, definitely get tear gas. Like, we're lucky today when we go out and protest that we're not to that point right now. I think we might get there, but we're not there right now. That's because they paved the way for us.
Yeah. So I'm hearing you point out that at that time there were a lot of risks at doing civil disobedience, and it was very, very dangerous. Like how the Freedom Riders as well were often spitting out their teeth when they'd get off of buses after they got beat up by the Klan. Should we read a little bit more now and then wrap up?
Sounds good. Do you want to do it, or should I?
Yeah, sure. I'll read a little. Why don't you read this one now?
Okay. King's message was not a hopeless one. To the contrary, he aimed to remind us that we have more creativity and more power and collective genius than we often imagine. He called us to a worldwide fellowship, a radical solidarity that lifts neighborly concern beyond one's tribe, race, class, and nation. He called us to embrace an unconditional love for humanity, not just in words, but in deeds. He called us to embrace an unconditional love for humanity, not just in words, but in deeds. Not just when it's convenient or politically profitable or safe or good for our careers.
Yeah, what are folks noticing in that? Like, she starts off with saying that King's message was not a hopeless one. What else do folks notice her pointing out?
I think he knew at that point, as he says, he called us to embrace an unconditional love for humanity. And that means we all have to work together in this cause, and no one's cause is more important than the others. We all have to work together, and we're not disposable. Everyone matters. Everyone deserves food, water, a place to live.
Yeah, she says he called us to a worldwide fellowship of radical solidarity that lifts neighborly concern beyond one's tribe, race, class, and nation. And what I notice, so there's this section here, and then she actually starts talking about love in some more specific ways. So, of course, the concept of love is often misunderstood and misinterpreted, but it is not some sentimental weak response, King explained. I am speaking of that force which all the great religions have seen as the supreme unifying principle of life. And this force, he said, has now become an absolute necessity for the survival of humankind. What do you all notice here?
I
He
think
calls it, go ahead.
Just the empowering nature of forming love as a verb and a force, and it's necessary for us for survival. Calls it pretty direct on that one. And I think it makes me think too, like how love is literally a necessary thing for children to survive. Like the desire and the impetus for a parent to go find support for their child, and for a child, to have that love and support is a necessary thing for survival. So how to bring that into an empowered approach to how we can do this, rather than just talk about.
I'm hearing you say that. Well, I'm wondering, do you think that how that relates to when Dr. King says, "I'm speaking of that force which all the great religions have seen as the supreme unifying principle of life." That love is not just something that's good, but it's actually the only thing that's going to get us through this existence thing.
Exactly.
It says to me that, love is something really powerful and uniting, not something that's, gooey. And it can be that, but in what he was saying more of, it's something strong, because so often our opposition wants to take what we value and diminish it. And he's definitely saying, like, no, this is, and I truly believe, like, love is how we win. Like, we will win, and we'll win with love, because if we had to hate, and I know the last time I was at a protest, there was this really beautiful woman, and she just looked so powerful and mean. And I was like, can you do me a favor and stand with a big smile on your face? Like, not like insane, but like, so I want you to smile and show people how beautiful you are, and that we're not just a bunch of miserable, angry people, that we're really like passionate people who care about our lives and our city and our world enough to come out here and show everybody that we care, and that's what. And often after protests, people are like, what's next? What do we do next? And drawing off of MLK Jr. and his movement, that movement, not his movement, but that movement is a great place to look at that. Like, we're going to go with love now. Because I know a couple of years ago, I was filled with a bunch of anger, and that's kind of, I'm still angry, but not that flaming anger, but that like long burning passion, that firebrand, that I'm compelled to continue this fight. But I will burn out if it's nothing but rage, if there's not that payoff of, that love that I have for my children, that I have for my friends.
Absolutely. I know that's been the biggest thing I've experienced myself, but just seeing the light, the fire you can light in people's hearts when that is the sustaining force. That is, anger and outrage and things feed into it, but it's this love. And just to speak on another quote, Dr. Cornell West saying that justice is what love looks like in public.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we're out there fighting for justice, it's literally acting with love and pursuing that for everyone who deserves it, and that's everyone. I've also heard like just this connection, like it's, I think, helped ground me sometimes, because we're going to get challenges all the time saying, oh, love is, you're saying that love's going to fix everything, and people really question it. And to show how integrated it is, I think like there's that aspect with justice. And then I've heard like a beautiful framing of how important our work or life's work can be, and I've heard people describe work as just love made visible. As I'd argue it should be. Everybody should have a good job to do, and through that work, through that expression, it's showing how you care, it can be, and maybe we can get it to be showing the care and the love.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about work, and we could talk about this more. Maybe it's interesting to think about work.
Yeah.
And pride in work.
Mm-hmm.
Hi.
Oh, you're back. Cool.
Yeah. Thanks. But yeah, work and pride in work. There's a connection there with love. Maybe let's take a quick look now back. There's one last part I want to show in this where she talks about bell hooks, and then maybe we can move into Islamophobia and anti-Semitism, and we'll see if we have time for some bird dogging today. But let's.
You read my mind that we could bring some. We talked about Dr. King and Dr. West. I'd love to bring Bell into there, of course.
Mackenzie says, love is resistance. It's hard to truly love as an action because it is overwhelming how much love is needed, but I think it's synergistic when we commit to it. Yeah, it's a big risk to pursue love.
And I think if it's done well, it by definition is synergistic. And
yeah,
yeah.
Yes. So, looking over here now, let's just take a little look at this, and somebody read it after I give the first part. Bell Hooks echoed this view in her essay "Love as the Practice of Freedom." She wrote,
without love, our efforts to liberate ourselves and our world community from oppression and exploitation are doomed. As long as we refuse to address fully the place of love in struggles for liberation, we will not be able to create a culture of conversion where there is a mass turning away from an ethic of domination.
Yeah, so what do you notice here?
Do we have many Bell Hooks fans in the audience? I wonder.
Interesting question. Yeah, right. Like how many?
I need to read more. But yeah. What are we noticing?
Yeah. What are folks noticing? So she
It's saying
says,
a lot of what we just were talking about, that, without love in our movement, we're doomed.
yeah. She says, we will not be able to create a culture of conversion where there is a mass turning away from an ethic of domination. What's her point of view here?
It's like a very strategic point of view, saying we won't ever be able to have a chance at converting people to love when. Oh wait, maybe I'm misunderstanding this. What does she mean by conversion?
I think it's to change people's minds, like to go away from. I mean, a lot of people don't participate in politics because they don't feel like their voice is important. And that conversion from my voice matters to my voice doesn't really matter. So we need to, how we're so dominate, like we're so dominated in publics right now of that's hard to change people's mind. Like, know that if you just vote, it'll change the world.
One thing I'm noticing in here is she's saying there is a mass conversion where there is a mass turning away from the ethic of domination. And you might have been suggesting this, Carla, but I wanted to like explore that a little bit, right? A culture of conversion where there's a mass turning away from an ethic of domination. So what's her perspective on that?
Oh, thank you for reading that again. It did just click. That seems like that. Yeah, this strategy of how to get there, moving away from domination. It's a great tactic to get in the right direction, right?
Yeah, and she's saying as long as we refuse to address fully the place of love in struggles for liberation, then we will not be able to create a culture of conversion. Because if you have some like imagine somebody who thinks like the kind of people who say nice guys finish last, right? Like somebody says that, right, cynically, like no, it's the law of the jungle, you've got to dominate, right? Like and then how do you get somebody away from that kind of powerful drug?
I like what Mackenzie wrote. She wrote, we have to create something new, not just fight what exists.
Yeah, that's right.
Which I think that's that conversion of, we are not fighting to keep things the same. We're fighting to make things better.
Yeah. And Mackenzie even goes on to say we can't dominate oppression to get rid of it. So many of us don't know what real love is.
What is love? Baby, don't hurt me. Don't hurt me no more. I think it's a big song for a reason. No, I felt that. I'm sorry for the novelty there, but in serious, like how that seems to be one of the biggest challenges to me. What Mackenzie's last comment saying, that if we don't know what real love is, what pathways do we have to convert away from domination? Like,
well, it's an interesting question as to what's the relationship between domination and love. As domination increases, what happens to love? As love increases, what happens to domination?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, like if I know that in certain situations you can't get rid of domination, and this is what Mackenzie said. I think a lot of people here are saying this, right? That we can't dominate oppression to get rid of it, as Mackenzie said. And so, like, the love becomes very, very critical in this case.
So is that is that saying this makes a lot of sense, but maybe just to clarify or tee it up to your wisdom, is the is part of what you're saying, BA, that a turning away from domination and dominating forces would create enough space for love to emerge?
Well, or what I'm saying is that love very often is what allows somebody to give up their domination. Like only a force as powerful as love might do that, in the sense that like you have to have something to replace the power you had before.
Yeah. Well, I
Otherwise,
guess
a lot of people will think it's pointless.
Yeah. Well, and that makes me think strategically, like how until those that are, you know, that haven't been able to experience real love in life, whether through family, through friends, through a loving a romantic relationship, this or that, like if there is that gap in knowing what love is like, then how does it get spread? You know, like how do we show it in the best, strongest way? I guess it's a big question, but through justice is probably a big one. But I think I guess I'm thinking on like an individual and personal level, like showing and demonstrating and like conveying to people, oh, this is what love is and what it feels like. I guess there's a multitude of ways, right? But I love the strategic frame a question, and it seems to be kind of a hard one.
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge, especially in this society, for people to see how you get from A to B, because you have to kind of take a leap of faith somewhere at some point, and that's challenging. And Mackenzie says, Bell Hooks in All About Love says we have to demystify love and create a clear definition of it. Reminds me of Shakespeare's play As You Like It, which some of us might have noticed was part of The Good Lord Bird. If people know that short film or film series about John Brown, they have a scene from As You Like It, and there's a character in As You Like It, Rosalind, who's dressed up like a man, and in a forest as a free person, even though she's a woman living in a time where women are subjugated. And she runs into somebody who's in love with her there, Orlando. And Orlando's like obsessively romantically in love with her, and writing really bad poems on the tree and making really bad rhymes too. And she wonders, is this actually a nice person or not? But she also pretends to be herself. He thinks she's a man, and she pretends to be herself and tries to help him understand that like love is not an ideal thing. It's a very real thing that has realities with people. And she does this very comically and in a funny way. But I think that there's a lot of truth in that with love, that love has a reality to it. That's very real. It's not something that you can idealize. Yeah, thanks, Mackenzie.
Yeah, thanks a lot. That actually really, I was kind of floundering there, but I think it reminded me that with the being grounded in knowing that love is very ingrained in our being and our survival. Of course, if we can find ways to exhibit it, people will feel it within themselves, and I guess it's just a challenge to find the ways to do it in an effective way to bring it out.
Yeah, and so let's see here. Hold on, let me bring this back up again. So we had before we were going to talk about a number of things here. Do we want to explore Islamophobia or anti-Semitism? We've got a couple different resources on both today. Does anybody have any strong preference for one or the other? And feel free to call it out in the audience too.
Yeah, curious if anyone in the audience has a preference. And B, I'm trying to recall. Last time, I think we touched in on both. A few weeks ago, we touched on both.
I think we started with anti-Semitism just because it was personal to me.
Mhm.
Maybe we want to start with Islamophobia since nobody's piping up.
That sounds good.
Yeah, and there's this week. We didn't last time we did this. I don't think we talked so much about. There's a number of things that we want to explore here. There was a piece on the Mehdi Hassan show where they interviewed the director of this film about Islamophobia, and so I actually want to. This is from a Muslim perspective, so I want to actually start with that, and then we've got an example of something that has been kind of an example about Islamophobia recently. So, should we start with the Mehdi Hassan show clip? This is from a documentary too.
Sounds good.
My dad used to sit on the edge of my bed every night and recite a prayer of protection over my sister and I. My parents got calls telling them your children will be next. That experience taught them to keep their religion and culture hidden.
And the first day of class, the teacher made me stand up and tell people what it's like to be Iraqi. Like I was like this specimen, like this alien.
Farouk, what a weird name. I don't know why your parents named you that. You should be Jimmy. We're gonna call you Jimmy.
I had something inside of me being like, I don't know who I am.
I have to scream louder. I'm Black, I'm Muslim, I'm here in order to be heard.
It took years to rediscover that assertive, bold person. Every day, I choose that path of resistance.
Directed by award-winning Pakistani-American director and cinematographer Nosheen Dadaboy, her documentary, An Act of Worship, paints a portrait of the last 3 decades of Muslim American life. News events that infamously led to spikes in Islamophobia are woven in with personal narratives and home videos of how Muslims endured and often overcame the backlash. Nosheen Dadaboy, the director of An Act of Worship, joins me now to discuss her latest film. Thank you so much.
And I just want to, as we're starting in on this, what are you all noticing? And there's one comment from Mackenzie from the last section I just want to share again. We just have to be honest with ourselves when love is not real instead of pretending because we are afraid to exist without it, is what Mackenzie says. So yeah, what did everybody notice in the last section? Like, I noticed how somebody said to someone named Farouk that his name shouldn't be Farouk, it should be Jimmy, and that they were going to call Farouk Jimmy. That's what I noticed, or one thing I noticed. What else did folks notice here?
I noticed the person who said that every day they wake up and choose the path of resistance. And I mean, to me, that actively sounds like you're going to choose the path of love every day and act with resistance.
Yeah. I think I read in Ilhan Omar's biography, her autobiography, I think I read her talking about the difficulty of choosing to cover her head and exploring the different dynamics of that. That she had to make the decision for herself on the one hand, but then there was also lots of different kinds of pressures. What else did folks notice?
I love how it feels very much in the U.S. The framing from an American, cultural perspective. The way community acceptance was showed up, and I just hearing her tell her story in her community and family just made me realize that there's a lot of places where we grow up and don't have that touch point to know what somebody's life is like, and to know their experience and how hard it is. And until you know it, it's almost troubling that it's hard to know what the struggle for in this case Muslim Americans are when they're expressing their life with until you hear it, and then once you do it, a lot of times the sympathy can come through. But just made me realize that it can be hard to have those touch points sometimes, and I'm grateful that she went into that here with Mehdi, the documentary, right?
Yeah, it's a documentary, and she's talking to Mehdi about it.
Yeah.
And so I can play. Do you want me to play a little more of this? Yeah, let me play a little more of it. Oops.
So much for coming on the show. What made you set out to make this particular film? Because you and your family are also featured in parts of it, I know. Was it something about your own personal experience growing up Muslim American that said, I got to show this to the world?
Well, thank you so much for having me. So I think there's like two kind of origins of the film. One is that I watched the 2016 elections with one of our producers, and he's also Pakistani and Muslim American. And, both of us were like, this next 4 years might be really tough for our community. So we wanted to do something about this, and we set out to make this film. But part of us knowing that those 4 years were going to be really tough were because of our lived experience. Like, we were both in college when 9/11 happened. And for me, that's why I became a filmmaker. So the origin of this film can go back so many years, where I wanted to become a filmmaker in order to have better representation of my community. And this film is kind of a product of that 20 years of labor to, honing my craft. Yes. and getting to the point where I could make a project like this.
And your film goes all the way back to the Iran hostage crisis of 1979, uses that major global news event to show how it affected Muslims in America as well. They faced a lot of discrimination, violence even in the wake of that. But you also highlight an event that I think a lot of people today don't realize also led to an anti-Muslim backlash. Let's have a watch.
It was an act of cowardice, and it was evil. The United States will not tolerate it, and I will not allow the people of this country to be intimidated.
The governor said earlier that he never gave a thought that anything like this would happen in Oklahoma. You chaired the House Intelligence Committee. Did you ever give it a thought in your own state?
Well, Larry, a month ago in New York City, I gave a speech on Islamic fundamentalism and the potential for terrorism in the United States.
They had arrested 2 or 3 Middle Eastern-looking men.
Nice people. Yeah, let me take a picture of you. Nope, I already had one.
Early in the morning, and my parents are watching the local news, and our mosque was burned down.
Tell us about that sticky note that we saw that reads Oklahoma City bombing, because it's not just a visual device you created for the film, right? There's something behind it.
Yeah, so the Post-it notes that kind of showcase the timeline that the film highlights are one, they came out of a scene that was in the film where the film opens with a workshop where people are sharing personal like incidents of Islamophobia and putting them on a physical timeline. And for us, like the kind of carrying that through the film was to really help the audience understand that these policies or these like historical moments are not abstract and they're not academic. Like they're really landing on actual people and they're having real impact on communities.
What are folks noticing now? I see. Jay said the Groot in her backdrop.
Yeah, over her left shoulder there. There's a small thing.
Yeah, what are people noticing? Like I heard them talk about the Oklahoma City bombing. And I heard a man being interviewed. Was it by Larry King? He was being interviewed and he said, what about, or have you heard about radical Islamic terrorism? And it's interesting, right? Because in that case, it wasn't actually, right? It was a white dude. But like, but I'm just noticing how even before 9/11, they were already jumping to the possibility that it was somebody who's Muslim.
Oh, Carla, muted.
Okay, sorry. I was really confused about that because I was like, no, it was Tim McVeigh who bombed Oklahoma. So what's going on here, And then I was like, oh, that's right. Of course they're going to go right to some, foreign aspect, but instead it was really a white supremacist who took it upon himself to get even for Waco. So yeah, that misinformation and how that harms that whole community and puts them at risk again, like over and over and over, our government shows that they're capable of doing this. This is their capacity.
Yep.
So I'm like, okay, I'm back now because I was very confused.
We were on the same page. We were on the same. It took me a sec to get there as well.
Yeah, are there any puzzles for anybody in the audience too, or anything like that? What's going on with everybody? Are there any puzzles?
I think the question in my mind is the history of conflict and war and invasion in the Middle East that the United States and other Western powers had in the region prior to 2000. I know a bit of it here and there, but that history comes to mind as a question of what was involved there for those seeds of division and mistrust in certain communities, in this case Muslim communities. Just wondering, curious about the history that led up to that point. This was in 2000, right, or 95? 95. So what dynamics were already in motion of this framing of Muslim people or Muslim presenting people to have certain likelihood of doing something like this, like just how the history informed that. It's a question in my head.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Sorry. Just that the dehumanization, and I know like the topic is of the day, so like I'm going to bring everything back to it. But then I know that a lot of people in Israel and especially in the Israeli military that the mindset is that Palestinians are terrorists, and that there is a basis to expect that, and it's a way to justify more war against them. And those are the pieces I'm wondering about, the wars that preceded that somebody would assume and prosecute two brown human beings, two Muslim human beings. Like,
Yeah.
I also noticed the shades on the little. They had a beautiful clip of a couple boys running around, and we did that little pose. He had these shades that were just like so 80s.
Yeah, iconic. Yeah, no, but it's really wild to think about, to hear these clips and hear about Muslim people being picked on in our country when they had nothing to do with the specific crime.
Absolutely.
So,
and
yeah.
Just the last thing is, like, maybe it points to a way, if we can understand and learn more about communities and these beautiful human beings, then human beings that we don't have touch points, or we like, to learn more about humanity is an antidote to know that, like, oh, I remember these examples where it's people wearing hijabs, or any saying prayers in Arabic, or this and that. Like, they're lovely human beings. So, like, to have those touch points can circumvent, I think, that prejudice.
We're coming back to the love now. Now, we've been here a while. I want to make sure we explore. Do we want to? We had other stuff we could explore in Islamophobia, but we've explored for a little bit. Do we want to explore anti-Semitism a little bit now, before we wrap up?
Yeah, we could.
Or do we have more that we want to explore under Islamophobia?
What do you think, Carla?
Well, if we want to cover everything, then we should move on. I do think, I know in my neighborhood, it's really hard to get to know people. And if it was more, like you said, when we had COVID, look what happened. Everyone blamed the Asian community, So again, these patterns of, like, we don't take responsibility. We just point the finger and blame. And now all of a sudden our movement has become like, all right, we're not going to really blame anybody. If we know that you are guilty, we are just going to flat out call you out, which is a beautiful tactic that I've seen Climate Defiance absolutely just perfect. Big fan. So, that kind of behavior. But, like, you're still not, like, it's done with a lot of love, if you ask me, because people don't realize, like, when you're putting your body on the line, it gets scary real quick, So, so there's that. But yeah, I definitely feel like, why do we have to know people? Why can't we just accept, like, okay, that's you, you're Ewing. Okay, that's good. I'm gonna me over here, you. As long as you don't hurt me or hurt anybody else, we're good. Well, let's learn about each other, like you said. But why do you have to, like, why did I have to have a transgender kid before I, like, fully realize how much I love transgender people? You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, I think it pairs really, really well. This talk of radical love, and if we can get to radical acceptance of Ewing, then that's so good.
Yeah, the revolutionary love and using is our new thing.
Let's go. And I mean,
I want to just recognize that Mackenzie made a comment, and we didn't read it yet, so I want to just read it. And of course, also Tyler just mentioned the groat as well and called it a piggy bank of sorts. Said Joey has one too. But Mackenzie also said here, why can't we condemn white supremacy instead of creating a non-white villain to scapegoat? I think the KKK still isn't considered a terrorist organization.
Oh yeah, those protections run deep.
Yeah,
and I do believe wasn't Tim McVeigh like the first American to do a terror? No, because we had the Unabomber. It was a really special, not special, but when they found that out, it really blew their minds that it was Tim McVeigh, because he had also written in to Waco saying, like, I'm watching what happens here. I'm watching how you treat these white people. And then, after that, he was like, all right, that wasn't acceptable, and took matters into his own hands.
Well, and it's still the biggest domestic, remains the deadliest act of domestic terrorism in U.S. history. And just one last piece, before we move on to touch on anti-Semitism, I think that this piece of learning, I agree. I wish it wasn't so necessary. I think there are some mechanisms that were, if they were free from us, and the dehumanizing or the lack of humanity in various spaces would help this. But I think the learning, we know if we know it can help now, like just a small thing. I grew up in Nebraska and didn't have much access to knowing about a lot of different communities, and just one thing I've been learning recently to make it really real is we're in Ramadan right now for people of a Muslim faith, and I'm no expert by any means, but just some research that I've found, if I could bring that, millions of Muslims in the United States and UK, around the world, are observing, obviously Middle East, everywhere that Muslims are, observing the holy month of Ramadan, month of fasting, reflection, community, and family time. And this, Ramadan is the ninth month of the Islamic calendar, because it's the month that Muslims believe the first verses of the Quran were revealed to the Prophet Muhammad. And so, just that I thought is beautiful that they're, encouraged to fast in this time, give to charity, show kindness and patience, and strengthen their relationship with God. And so that's happening now. I know a special time in some of our community members' lives.
Yeah, Ramadan. It's ridiculous to think that something that's so precious right now is being undermined in such a large way this time. Yeah. Speaking of Islamophobia, right? But maybe we'll be a poetic.
Oh.
What's that?
Yeah, sorry to just dropped random knowledge there, but it is connected. We don't have enough time to talk about all of it, but just like you said, the special time and the fact that it's matched with such difficulty, and historically in 2014 and 2021, at least in Palestine, just really actually great violence aligns with the Ramadan time, and it's just unimaginably hard during what's supposed to be a really spiritual time.
Yeah. It's a tough time right now. And so I looked at this. We did a little bit of different stuff on anti-Semitism before. I found a really kind of neat thing here. This is from Kenyon College, and they actually let me see if I can pull this up. This is what this is it's example of North American and British anti-Semitism. And so one thing I thought we'd take a look at today was, and they actually have we could read a little bit of this if we wanted to, because I think there's some good stuff in this that talks about the history of it. But honestly, we might also just want to jump into some of the stuff that's here. And this library has a lot of them. Like, for instance, just looking at this is, somebody want to read this out loud?
Yeah, sure. The statement by Henry Ford.
Yeah.
Regarding charges against Jews made in his publications, the Dearborn Independent, and a series of pamphlets entitled The International Jew, together with an explanatory statement by Lewis Marshall, president of the American Jewish Committee, and his reply to Mr. Ford.
Yeah, and so some of these are partial pieces of like anti-Semitic propaganda, and then some of this is more obvious. Like, for instance, this thing here, which is, I believe this is Imperial Fascist League in England, and so it has, like, for instance, hateful quotes. For instance, if you read up the top here, it's got a quote by Carlyle: "Actually and spiritually, the Jews only deal in money, gold, and old clothes, or of real wealth they have contributed nothing." So you can see here, this is kind of like very classic anti-Semitism. It's pretty important to see this. What are folks noticing here?
Do we want to read that one in the center? Or is it too abhorrent to even speak on?
Yeah, I suppose we maybe let's start with the top paragraph of that. Oops. Let me come back in here. I'm sorry.
Would you like one of us to read it?
That is up to you. Hold on. Let me switch this up for just a second. I accidentally switched tabs for a second, and I need to come back to the right tab. Here we go. Okay. Sorry about that, everyone.
Thank you for facilitating, Pia.
Oh, no problem. Yeah. So let's go. Let's take a look at this anti-Semitic propaganda. So does somebody want to read the first paragraph or the second paragraph?
I can read the first one.
Mm-hmm.
Wherever Aryan anti-Semitic movements have recently arisen, it has been the custom of the Jew-controlled press to suggest that they have been inspired from German sources, and that anti-Semitism is an invention of the National Socialist Party.
It says the purpose of this pamphlet is to show the antagonism to the Jew has existed among Aryan peoples from the earliest times due to Jewish greed, arrogance, and intolerance, and objection to manual labor. It's interesting. What do folks notice in this? I'm sorry I keep zooming out of it. It's very hard to read, honestly. Like, I get all kinds of reactive when I read it. But yeah, what are people noticing here?
Though definitely that the Jewish people have brought this on themselves because of their greed, arrogance, intolerance. an objection to manual labor.
That last point really kind of sticks out, doesn't it? Objection
Yeah.
to manual labor. Like, this is October 1935. So 1935. That's, let's see. So that's the same year the Nazi flag was invented, apparently.
Wow. Yeah, it feels like it puts forth the approach that whether it's through genocide or a movement of hate, to pretend that their framing of just painting an entire multivaried, multitudinous people with a broad brushstroke and say they're all this. It's just so counter to humanity, about the diversity and the range within every group of peoples. Just to paint with such broad brushstroke like that is just so yeah, kind of makes your skin crawl.
Yeah, it's I guess we should say something about like what we're noticing here in this, and maybe also like yeah, when they say objection to manual labor, I do find that like really interesting, right? Because I'm noticing in that there's kind of like a sense of caste, that when we think about like the Nuremberg laws, and later developments, right? There's like this sense in Nazi Germany of forcing Jewish people to do labor, because they think that we're lazy, and also this sense of like it says on Auschwitz, right? Work will make you free. Does anyone else notice anything here, or notice anything about the point of view here?
I'm noticing that they're trying to take the blame off the Germans for the anti-Semitism, for by blaming the Jewish people themselves, saying because they're in control of the press. So since they're in control of the press, what they're writing is, they're in control of what they're writing. So it's not us. It's not the Germans. It's the invention of the Socialist Party, the National Socialist Party.
Well, yeah, there's like this, there's right, like there's this point of view. So I'm hearing you say that there's this kind of scapegoating,
yeah,
of saying that the Jewish people are responsible in part because they have their own press. And now what were you trying? Now I noticed you were trying to connect that in some way to the invention of the National Socialist Party. Can you say more about how you were thinking about that?
Well, it's basically saying that the Aryan movement didn't come from the Germans, right? They're not inspired by the Germans, which we know they are, right? So they're just really trying to take the blame off themselves and Germany, like, we're not getting this from them. This party is making it up.
Yeah, and reading through it, I don't know if this is connected to that, Carla, but this like, yeah, exactly, putting off their own responsibility in this, like, it's just there's so much dissonance in through this that it's like it's not this, but then the purpose of the pamphlet is to put the blame on Jewish peoples and say, oh, we're justified because of these. Anyway, sorry if I like didn't connect to your point, but I think that level of like dissonance is just, it's almost hard to track, because it's like, are they running away from responsibility, or are they taking ownership of it?
Are they running away from responsibility or taking ownership of it? Do you want to say more about that?
Well, it's like what Carla was saying, that the saying and what we're saying, that the Jew controlled press suggests that it's been inspired by German sources. It's like, I guess, are they trying to say that no, actually this is something that's exists within Aryan communities for much longer, and so they're like trying to take credit for this sentiment rather than say it's from German sources?
Yeah, there's like I'm noticing kind of like this sense of like I'm noticing when you say that, like, that there's this sense that, like, on the one hand, like, the Jews are inferior to the Germans, but if we don't stop it right now, they're going to overpower us. Is that kind of related to what you're trying to get at a little bit?
Yeah, to some extent. It's just I guess I'm trying to parse out if they're almost being proud of, like, the Aryan peoples have had this analysis, and they exhibit this antagonism for like justified reasons. Sorry, this is just hard to parse through, I feel like.
Yeah, I know it's not. Mackenzie has a few thoughts here. I want to share some Mackenzie's thoughts, and maybe we'll start thinking about what puzzles we want to work on for next time a little bit too. But Mackenzie says, I was thinking that most of the accusations of Jewish people have had to do with this worship of puritanical work ethic. That's an interesting notion, right? Thinking about like this puritanical work ethic and like the interchange between Jewish and non-Jewish communities, and like how Jewish labor is used in other communities. And and interesting to compare it to stuff like the Protestant ethic and the Spirit of Capitalism by Weber. And then Mackenzie also says it's interesting that they try to almost say that the hatred is natural.
Exactly. Like put their hatred on the people they're hating, and of course they do that from a place of hate, but like to try to justify it and say that their reasons for doing that. I mean, and what you were speaking to, BA, earlier, of knowing what their tactics were in these camps, in these labor camps, and these different areas, like, it just feels like one of the clearer examples of people being motivated by hate and domination.
Yeah. Well, and like thinking also about if they say the hate is natural, right? Like, so then how are they justifying it? They're either going to justify it through eugenics or through God. Because how do you justify a hate to be natural unless you say it's in nature somehow? But of course, in like when we learn about the science, right? The subject itself doesn't tell us that like some people are superior or inferior to others.
It also seems very much like a distraction piece. Like it's not us, it's them, and it's them, because it points a finger at two other groups instead of themselves.
Yeah. Mackenzie says accusations of laziness are used to justify oppression of Black and poor and disabled people today still.
Here. I mean, and speaking back to Michelle's book, The New Jim Crow, been learning a lot how things going on in this country informed Nazi Germany about how Jim Crow was done and how reservations were handled in the United States to concentrate people, displaced people, and in that example, what they learned and take from that. So, in a way, it makes me proud and happy to be on this journey of radical love with you all, because we're seeing the ways that these radical hate, this extremist hate, are connected, and so we can connect this radical love to a lot of different spaces and a lot of different of our own tactics, then I think that's a good path.
We might just have a chance with radical love.
Maybe.
Do
Definitely.
you want to share any puzzles that folks are still noticing or thinking about? Anything else from anyone before we go? Yeah, Jay?
A lot of puzzles, but yeah, unless there's any others, maybe we'll come back. Come back to this topic.
Yeah, I think we should. It's a useful topic. There's so many examples of it. We just explored 2 today.
Absolutely.
I think the more we see these tactics, it strengthens. Like we see it right away, but that's something to teach other people when they see that, because they put the blame immediately. It goes where it doesn't belong, right? And if we all stop to think about it, it's probably not. I don't know if that made any sense, but I mean, we just see how tight, like the lines are drawn, and with what happened, and the plan for the reservations wasn't really for these people to survive, and so
yeah,
they've got their strategies down.
They're playing their cards, and we should notice every time. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. If we don't notice, then we're in trouble.
Okay, so let's keep learning.
Yeah, I think this is great. Well, thank you everyone for thank you, Carla and Jay, for joining here tonight. This has been really lovely. It's been really great having you both here and learning with you both. Any last thoughts as we wrap up?
Chins up. Chin up.
Well, we'll keep our chins up as we go through the week. We'll be back on Sunday. Love you too.
Love you, Mac. Where's my thing? There we go.
Bye, Mackenzie. Thank you
Good night.
so much. Thanks everyone for coming out tonight.
Peace.
I'm BA.
I'm Jay.
I'm Carla.
And this has been Code Whatever tonight. If you're feeling very inspired by what we did here, you're always welcome to visit our website. That's codewhatever.us. And let me just show you all as we wrap up here. And on our website, it's codewhatever.us. Feel free to visit it, and you can check out all the new things that we're doing. Also, you're welcome to go there. We have a fundraiser going on right now on GoFundMe. We're a 501c3, so all donations are tax deductible. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great night. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
See you next time.
Bye, y'all. Much love. We
Much
sure
love.
need it.
Bye.